You are seeing in architecture the expressions of a society. The way we used to build has been forgotten. And so part of the challenge for us today is to look back to those things and remember, get inspired, and build better today. This whole series is about why are our houses ugly, okay? Part of the reason why is we're not building this anymore. As a community, as a society, we've changed our priorities and we're no longer thinking about the beauty of something. It's all about the cost, the savings, and the genius, celebrating the genius of some individual as opposed to contributing to, in a human scale, what we build. And what we build defines us. And we want honest buildings, we want honest citizens, we want honest students. Build honest buildings, okay? So it really does matter in this architecture. This is one of the finest classical buildings in Fort Worth. Look what they've done. They've taken the Ionic order, okay, and they've got bull's heads and cow heads up there as the capitals for this Ionic order, right? They have basically played with those proportions and those details and influenced it, pushed it into the story of Cowtown, right? The story of Fort Worth, heavy cattle industry, and things like that is showing up on the capital of the post office. That's incredible, that's awesome, that's so fun, right? There is incredible classical detailing on this, and think about the money that the government spent for this building, okay? Think about just the design of these lampposts in bronze, the way that's done, the bronze opening to the doorway. I mean, there is so much architectural detailing here, carved stone. It's awesome and it's amazing. It speaks to how we're changing our thinking about design and architecture and building. This does influence residential architecture. You know, it used to be that architects, and one of the challenges that we have with architecture today is that the architects that do commercial work versus the architects that do residential work are completely different. There was a split right around after World War II when it became much more common for architects to be trained to do important buildings. And the Starchitect, right, the star architect idea where you have this genius that can't be confined by the rules of, humanity, that they have to go create their own things. And so you end up with buildings that look like crumpled paper, right, that are amazing engineering feats, but not really contributing to our built environment, not really contributing to beautiful houses. So think about the electric building we went and looked at, that phone building, right? The ornamentation almost communicated that electricity, right? They almost communicated that bright light that was being, expressed there. And so here too, this classicism is expressing the importance, okay, of mail, of this government building, and what government should mean, right? That government should mean stability, strength, that, sending a letter in the mail, right, in 1930, things are very difficult, right, communicates what we believe about the strength of government. And so the strength of the postal system, if you want to believe that. So it's funny to us today to sit there and go, the strength of the postal system, you got to be crazy. Back then, okay, they did that. They built this way. It's the reason banks were these really nice buildings, because they wanted to make people feel like they should be comfortable and safe putting their money in the bank, okay? If you ever watched It's a Wonderful Life, you know about the bank failures that took place, especially around the Great Depression. And so a place that was supposed to be this symbol of strength ended up crumbling. So there's symbols there, there's symbols that really matter. But let's go inside. I want to show you how beautifully this is. You'll be blown away with the level of ornamentation, the level of detailing. It's a wonderful example of how we used to build. So we're in this post office, and I'm talking low because it's just kind of a magical place. Look at the quality of materials, right? These green marble columns. Look at the Capitol here, okay? So this is 1930, so you're seeing a little bit of the Art Deco in that Capitol, right? That's not a typical Capitol. It has that kind of expressive ornamentation in the Capitol. Look at the floor, okay? Look how this space is arranged, that, these columns and the way the border in the columns and the way these come together express and define this area. The way this long hallway and the breakup of this hallways that going down with the paneled ceilings, right? Along with the floors that matches that panel ceiling. I want to go back to my office and I want to show you the regulating lines on the outside and how this was organized and put together. But before that, I want to stop at a new post office that was built within the last 10 years that shows you the difference between the way we used to build and the way we build today, and how that affects our buildings and our houses. Okay guys, so this was built 10 or 15 years ago. Quite different, right? What if that building downtown had been built like this? Yikes, okay? One of the things we learned from looking at this building is that the materiality, okay, is completely changed. And, you know, if you walk through an airport, okay, none of those materials in the airport really are things that you would put in your house. Maybe the drywall, but all the things they put in the bathrooms, all the things that they, you know, the window walls, all those different things, it's a completely different set of materials. So there's not a traditional set, and this is what this place looks like, right? This looks like a, you know, something out of the future. It's glass and steel and aluminum and, you know, what else, right? And so it's not very interesting, it's not very beautiful, but trying to manage today when the architects are being trained to build this and being trained to use products like this, specify products like this, means that our houses are oftentimes left out there in the wilderness with nowhere to go because we don't know how to use materials, we don't know how to use these things. And so going back to the past, studying traditional materials really matters. Let's go back to the office. I'll show you even more reasons why that post office downtown is so great, and we'll talk more about this. Okay guys, so I wanted to study a little bit more and dig into this building and look at its beauty and charm, right? These are the ionic order. The ionic order is done with, you know, the steer heads instead of the volutes, and so very creative way of doing it. Think about what's going on in America at this time. Think about Washington, D.C. Think about the Jefferson Memorial, the Lincoln Memorial, all wonderful, wonderful classical buildings. Well, there was a time when the government buildings and things like that were very much infused with classicism. And so the way to build a government building was to build it in the very classical way. Now, what that does and what that did for people at the time was it communicated tradition, right? If we build a building, post office like this in the Greek tradition or in the Roman tradition, like a Roman temple, it feels like it maybe has been around for 2,000 years, right? There's a lot of arguments going on right now about what government buildings should be, whether there should be a federal mandate that buildings should be classical, because a lot of government buildings are ugly today, and there's people pushing back saying, look, we used to build beautiful buildings, why can't we build those anymore? Now, on this building, and what I want to do is encourage you, you guys know I talk about classicism a lot, but look what's happening to this building and look how it's organized, because part of this is that I think that a lot of houses are being built today that are not organized. So many houses are assembled and haphazard and just thrown together for curb appeal without thinking about the classical traditions or the traditional traditions, the way we used to build. So what I want to do is I've broken this out, but I'm just going to kind of draw it on you here. You know, basically, if we look at this box right here, okay, that main frame right here, it's broken up and organized in a way. So if I start drawing lines, right, through here and another one through here, if I start doing a circle right there and seeing how this lays out, right, you'll see that there is an organization. My circles aren't very good, but you'll see it on the screen that it is broken out and laid out very simply and classically. There's another concept that the distance between these columns, okay, was something that was very carefully laid out. And there's a proportion. So if my column is sitting here and this other column is sitting here, okay, there are two column widths in between. There is a proportional relationship that's happening, guys. And if you look at the ancient pattern books, like I've done in my millwork book, everything was carefully laid out, from mantles to doors to everything, okay? And so there's a proportional relationship that was very important. There's a way of drawing a door that if I draw this square right here, and if I draw a line down and I draw and do a cross there, and I go halfway here, do this down here, that this relationship where these points meet are my door, okay? And then I put my thing here and I put a bracket and my pediment comes up, right? The point is that there's this relationship. This great book by Robert Adam called Classical Architecture is a wonderful book that lays out a lot of these architectural traditions, architectural rules, architectural guidelines that help you build better. This diagram for this doorway right here was done by Serlio in the 1500s. And so there's a proportional relationship between that doors of how tall should a door be, how should it be laid out. And if you look at these ancient pattern books, all these things were very careful about the proportion relationship. And typically there's a 2-to-1 relationship here between the height and the width of the door. So everything was proportional. The point is that when we break out this front and we start looking at it carefully and we start seeing the regulating lines, we go, oh, not only is it beautiful to look at, but it was carefully figured out. One of the things that's interesting is that these columns are a 1-to-7 relationship. That means there's 1 diameter, okay, and 7 diameters tall. Now, the rules would say that the Ionic order is typically a 1-to-8. What that means is that those columns are very strong. It's not wrong necessarily, you're just projecting a little bit more strength. And so here is the Ionic order broken out, and you'll see down here that it's all based on the human scale, right? It's all based on the human body. The reason it's interesting is that breaking it out in this column, I actually know if I measure the diameter of that column, how tall my base is, how tall my capital is. And so as people today end up trying to build traditional houses, so many of the parts and pieces are so messed up, we drive by them and go, I don't know why, something's messed up there. And if you watch my Wednesday videos on Instagram, you'll see, and people will comment, they say, I didn't see it, but now that you've shown it to me, now I see it. And that is that subtle difference, okay? And maybe this is the point, guys, is that the difference between good and great is sometimes 1/8 of an inch, is sometimes a very small thing, but you get 2 or 3 or 4 of those things right, and all of a sudden it can be, sparkling and beautiful. All we do is just copying the past, learning from the past, realizing the lessons it wants to teach us. Because if I look at my entire order, this is the Ionic order, just here, all of these proportions have been laid out and practiced. For 2,000 years, they've been practiced and perfected so that we know what's beautiful. We know that this system works. And if you want to introduce beauty into your house, you can practice this classical system, practice these proportions, and build more beautifully. Realize that you don't just have to be building a traditional house to practice these rules, to practice these proportions. All of our houses, okay? If you walk into an old house and you look around and go, I don't know why I like it, but I like it, that's that human scale that's been introduced into that house and makes sense. Now, that doesn't mean they've got a pilaster on the wall. That doesn't mean they've got all these classical systems laid out, but the proportions are there and you recognize it, you feel it. You go, I like the feel of this space. And because there's a human scale there, you naturally relate to it. So this isn't something, well, I'm not building a traditional house, so it doesn't matter. The size of your windows, the comparison between the size of your windows, the size of your door, the entry, all of those things do matter. And if you understand this classical system, you can build better houses, whether it's traditional or modern or whatever you're doing. So next time we're going to talk about churches, and certainly that's something that's certainly changed, as you guys may recognize. But all of this is an effort to figure out what happened to our houses and why they're not as beautiful as they used to be. So come join me.